Onto the spread of disinformation, which has become an increasingly decisive and damaging factor in elections around the world this year. Russia is, in particular, seeking to use disinformation networks to influence elections, and the forthcoming European Parliament polls are a major target. The Kremlin isn't the only one, though, trying to manipulate the narrative.
The Kremlin wants a vote in European elections.
A report by the German Federal Foreign Office found that Russia had used more than 50,000 fake accounts on X, sending more than 1 million tweets in order to manipulate public opinion only in Germany.
Some far-right members and staff of the European Parliament are being investigated for helping, accused of taking money to promote pro-Russia views through a propaganda network called Voice of Europe, allegedly financed by Moscow and then headquartered in Prague. Even after being sanctioned and expelled by both the Czech government and the EU, the website kept its Prague address, a surprise to at least one resident of the building.
Were you aware that your home address is being used as the site of a Russian propaganda website?
It's the first time that I heard about this.
While Voice of Europe may be muted, there are plenty of other voices that concern democracy activists. Veronika Vichova has been working to counter Kremlin disinformation for years and wishes European politicians would take a more active role.
Russian propaganda is not trying to persuade anyone about anything, really. They are just trying to stir chaos and distrust. So as long as we are not countering it with some kind of narrative that is going to create a story that is going to make people believe in democracy again, we're losing.
And are you losing right now?
I think we are on the verge of it.
Vichova illustrates how Czech candidates are attacking each other with accusations of Kremlin sympathies instead of presenting positive platforms.
So basically also the governmental parties are sort of spreading manipulation at best.
So disinformation about EU policies can't all be blamed on foreign influences. Plenty comes from European politicians themselves. The Hungarian government is accusing the bloc of planning to force young Europeans into the military to send them to Ukraine. DW's fact-check team dispelled that notion quickly, noting that Germany's Manfred Weber, head of the largest political group in the European Parliament, has called for the German army to reintroduce conscription, nothing else. But Russia's war on Ukraine has given disinformers of all backgrounds much more material to work with compared with the last European elections in 2019. And COVID pandemic conspiracy theories have also been resurrected for the vote. The European Digital Media Observatory is a hub for 52 fact-checking organizations. Coordinator Tommaso Canetta hopes voters will be proactive in informing themselves.
Nourishing a healthy skepticism on one hand, but do not also fall in the exact opposite of not trusting anything or anyone, because this is one of the goals of disinformation, wanting people not to trust anybody and thinking that, truth and falseness are absolutely the same.
Canetta also warns that while the use of artificial intelligence in creating deepfakes has not been as prevalent as was feared, such tactics could still be deployed at the last minute, making it very hard to verify information in time. He urges voters to stay vigilant. European elections will be a crucial test as to how much fact-checkers can do to ensure election integrity.
Okay, let's talk more about this with János Telke. János, give us more of a sense of just how widespread fake news and disinformation and misinformation is.
I mean, I think we're at a point where we, definitely can say the threat is real. We've seen ahead of the European elections now several coordinated efforts to spread disinformation. This activity might increase as we're approaching the vote. And experts also don't expect it to stop once the vote happens. I mean, it could likely continue afterwards to sort of, challenge the legitimacy of the vote. And, the threat definitely is real. Why is that so dangerous? I mean, I think, disinformation really works in effect like a death by 1,000 cuts. You have all these little falsehoods that are being spread, and the more falsehoods people see, the more they start to doubt things. And then these doubts, over time, they add up, and they slowly erode the trust in democracy, and that's something that's really incredibly dangerous.
You've been reporting on this for years now. What's different this time round, this year?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, first of all, disinformation is nothing new. I mean, for centuries, we've seen countries attempting to, influence public opinion abroad and influence votes abroad. And then over the last 20 years, we had the rise of the internet, social media, that made it easier and easier to spread that disinformation. But now, the rise of so-called generative AI, generative artificial intelligence, makes it easier than ever before for everyone to create fake videos, audios, images from scratch. And this really makes a big difference.
What about the Russian threat specifically? Which countries would you say are targets, and why is the Kremlin such a threat?
I mean, I think generally speaking, probably no country is safe from that threat. But in general, pro-Russian disinformation is sort of like most effective in countries where it can tap into an already pre-existing pro-Russian sentiment. And here in the European Union, those are mostly former communist countries. Hungary, for example, we've seen the report from the Czech Republic. I've done my own reporting in Slovakia. And Germany, to a certain degree, can also be included in that. And now, I think it's important to understand that often the primary goal of these disinformation campaigns is not necessarily to convince people sort of to change their mind, but it's kind of more, it's rather they target these people who already sort of believe in these narratives. And it's about the goal is apparently to confirm what they already believe in. And I think, that's also one of the reasons why we often see these disinformation campaigns that are really not that sophisticated. They look rather cheap, they look crude, but they're still effective in what they do.
Okay, and the goal, as Terry was mentioning there in the report, is not to get people to believe a certain narrative, but just to be a little distrustful about what's being sent around or propagated by certain governments or parties.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, we should not underestimate the role of artificial intelligence and the mere existence of this new technology, because, we live in an age now where just everything can be fake. And so if everything can be fake, then how do you know what's real? And I think, this really creates this new kind of sense of uncertainty. That's just a completely new situation.
Lastly, Russia wants to influence the outcome of these European elections. What sort of outcome would be good for Russia?
Well, I mean, the goal of these pro-Russian disinformation campaigns is to help pro-Russian candidates and parties get more votes. And, if that succeeds, this could have it would have far-reaching consequences. I mean, it could weaken support for Ukraine as Russia continues its invasion of Ukraine. It could weaken trust in democracy, democratic processes. And, it could destabilize the European Union in general. And, of course, a weaker Europe is something that could help Russia and Russian President Vladimir Putin on the global stage.
Janos, thank you very much for your analysis, and good to see you again.